This week on RSBANDB Update, Osseous brings a solid mid-tier PVM experience. We then discuss new death mechanics, Tier 95 dual-wield set effects, and ask, should magic abilities be decoupled from weapons? Also this week, skilling to level 110 and the newest for mining and smithing. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 988, recorded Thursday, May 30th, 2024. No skill left behind. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of RSBANDB Update, Boss Week, Osseous, the newest Rex Matriarch launch week here. Welcome aboard, Tanis.
Thank you, Shane.
Good to have you here, as always. Also joining us this week on the podcast to discuss Osseous, a couple of right-click examine live streams, including some very, maybe spiky, controversial combat things. Bears, you're here, as you helped us anchor combat stuff before. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Bears is an all-round PVMer, does it all, and last I heard, you have been having fun with your friends camping Zamorak at about 500, right?
Yep, this week I spent the whole day release at Osseous, and I got the log within 6 or 7 hours of the release, so I'm pretty happy about that. Oh,
good. So you don't have to go back. Perfect.
Nope.
Perfect. And also joining us is a new contributor to RSBANDB Update, Next Generation. All-around PVMer, skiller, cluer, and has perhaps some of the worst Zuck luck that I've been presented with. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
What was your rate that you went on hard mode? You said it's supposed to be like 1 in 13, but what did you wind up going there at the start?
Yeah, so 1 in 13. Technically, it's 1 in 12.75, but I just rounded to 1 in 13. That's what you should be getting on a deathless run. Keep in mind, if you die after Harakin and you continue your run after that, then sword piece drops are cut in half, or they're half as likely now. So all of my runs have been deathless because I guess call it a pride thing. If I die, I start over. Also, that lets me use the igneous stones, because you only get an igneous stone if it's deathless. That lets me use the igneous stones to count how many kills I've had since my last drop. I only pull them from the chest when I get a drop.
All right.
So,
and how bad did it get?
Yeah. So, I was at like 10 kills in-ish when I started teaching my friend how to do it. He got a drop on his first drop. Or his first kill. He got a second drop on his 5th kill. And I'm just sitting there like, where's mine? And so I keep killing him. And I keep killing him. And I keep killing him. And I finally got my first drop at kill 42.
Holy crap.
Yikes.
Yeah. My second drop was at 84.
I hope you had more fun at Osseous this week.
A little bit. I only did like maybe an hour or two.
Okay, fair enough.
But I was rusty, like really rusty.
Well, welcome to the show. We're gonna talk about Osseous, the right-click examine stuff on combat, and of course skilling. But before we do that, big thank you to our experienced tier Patreon members for making RSBANDB Update possible, and that's Amos Reed, Andrew C, Drama Free, Jason S, Jesse W, Kesky, Ricky A, Rippeth, Runestar, and the Naked Captain. You can also, of course, follow along in the show notes over at update.show, and we have our community Discord at update.show/discord, and the French chat can be found in-game at BitsBytes. All right, so Osseous launch week, the newest Rex Matriarch that started off as a game jam project, was brought to life by Mod Ramen and Mod Camel. What we're going to do here is we're going to go over some of the mechanics of the boss fight, talk about the ring itself, and I think the simplest way to describe this is that it's an evolution of the previous matriarchs, in that it's a little bit more difficult, I'd say, maybe a little bit more on the mechanic side too, given where the game is at with the power that necromancy brings to it. So, opening thoughts. Let's start with you, Bears.
I think it was pretty spot on to how difficult it should be. I mean, I would say if it's being a Rex Matriarch, it's not going to be too difficult. End game players are going to be AFKing it, and the mid-level players will be able to kill it. And so I think it hit that spot pretty well. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think it was in a good spot.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. And I made special note of this on launch day. Moderaman put out a post on X. He said that, you know, just a reminder that this is Rex Matriarch, and if you're taking this thing, you know, with full, you know, tier 95 Raziel gear, you're likely just gonna smash through it right away. And obviously that reminder is out there for the people who are adept at combat, that you're gonna smash this. And some of you might even say, you know, it's too easy and it bores you, but you know, lo and behold, it does hit the spot it needs to hit. I will say that. Tanis, you went through it after the quest. You got a kill. Where exactly? Should I go through some of the mechanics first, or do you want to talk about your kill experience?
We can cover the mechanics.
Okay. Okay, because I feel like that's where these things will come into play when we're talking about the accessibility concerns and just how it went for you on that. So it's a simple rotation. It starts off with 2 necromancy attacks, a ranged attack, and then another necromancy attack. Following that, it summons minions, and in that summoning action, also, the boss performs a tail smash. And if you're not careful, that tail smash will hit you for upwards of close to 6,000 damage, and that's an attack that you're going to want to resonance or divert away from that. Then after
it's also melee, so you can just pray that.
Yeah, or that. I guess that works too. Then that halves it, and you use a defensive, you could bring it down to a manageable amount. Then after that attack, you got another necromancy attack, another ranged attack, and then a necromancy attack. And following this, the baby dinosaurs are propelled backwards towards the player, backwards towards the arena, and they will start attacking the player with melee. And when they attack, they do have the ability to stun. After that, you have 2 more necromancy attacks, and then the roar attack happens where the player is rooted in place, and any baby dinosaurs left over will explode, dealing 50% of their life points in an AoE damage. Then after this, 2 more necromancy attacks, and then the munch attack, where all players are brought up close to the boss. You got to deal 5,000 damage in this time period to break free of the root, and if the root is not broken, Osseous will deal another 6,000 type plus damage, and then from there, the rotation just repeats, and it becomes quite clear after you kill it a number of times. So, you know, just leaning into this, Tanis, where did this become cumbersome or concerning on your end?
Well, I mean, just going into it, I expected it to be a little bit easier than what it was. I guess I expected it to be a little bit more in line with the traditional matriarchs. And I'm always hoping, hey, this next update will be the thing that I can do and really get into combat. I was able to get a kill through, just being a sponge. I didn't find a lot of audio cues that would let me try to do something about these mechanics. Like I said, I just kind of soaked them up because that was pretty much all I could do. I was able, we have the outlines and the stuff from High Contrast, but I can't say that really played much of a role with this in particular.
No, because it's basically just the boss and the little minion things.
Yeah, and the thing about it is because of its size, that verticality that Nex is talking about. For me, that also makes it even harder to catch these mechanics because I'm only looking at part of the boss because it's so big. So if when it's that size and then it's also magnified 300%, I'm not catching those things for the mechanics. So I was expecting it to be more of a God Wars 2 level type thing, but it ended up being a little bit more than that, and a lot of hit points, right? Like I struggle with DPS.
Yeah, it's 350k,
that's not my thing.
I think, if I...
Yeah, so it took a really long, it took me quite a while. That being said, I think it is exactly what was promised. I think it's a good addition to the game.
It's one step up from the last Matriarchs.
Yeah, it's just, as usual, I just not very good with combat. So, but I got a kill. I got no nothing. I got damaged bones. That was it. But I got a kill.
Does it provide you any sort of push to go learn when it comes to this, for like if it comes up as a Reaper task or something?
I think it really kind of solidified that when I did enjoy RuneScape combat, it was before any of this stuff. It was the legacy style. I don't like trying to do a RuneScape 2-step, and this is just me, right? Like, I mean, it's just not for me. That's why I'm a skiller. I keep thinking that the next update is going to be the one, but at the end of the day, it is still grid movement based, point, click, tick, 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 and that just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. And to kind of just exemplify this, after I observed the mechanics for a few times, to just illustrate the different way that I thought about it, is that to me it just again became just like any other boss that's very choreographed, where it's just a matter of counting attacks until the next one and figuring out what to do, and then finding the best way to kind of fit a living and death rotation to really smash it to bits into this. So, but next, what are your thoughts on the on the boss in terms of its mechanics and play?
So, okay, one thing I want to note right off the bat is that this is a necromancy almost exclusive boss, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They made the entrance a route that you have to climb over that is not wide enough to force your conjurers to teleport to you. I feel like that's an oversight on Jagex's part. A. B.
Ramen did tweet that there are some fixes coming for that log balance next week.
Just give us a teleport my conjures to me ability in the necromancy book that doesn't consume global cooldown. Like, I don't think it should be that hard. I've been asking for that since necromancy's release. Just give us an ability that we can press a button and they're right under me now.
Summoning has that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I
the code from that.
But my question with that is, how many places is something like that needed?
A lot, actually. You'd be surprised. Especially back when they used to get stuck on everything. Thankfully, they don't now. But like, ED1 is a good example when you're fighting Siryu and you climb on its back and they just don't follow you there.
Oh,
you have
okay.
to cancel them and resummon them.
And see, for me, I'd been summoning everything inside the arena because I was staying for multiple kills. So that's not something I specifically ran into for that. But
it's only for your first kill. But
yeah, what about the actual gameplay and whatnot from a more mid-range-ish perspective? Would you say?
I'd say Osseous runs into another issue that I've noticed within the past year or so when I've been really getting into the higher end bosses. The slower an attack animation is, surprisingly, the harder it becomes to properly time your prayer flicks to it. A really good example of the opposite is Telos. Like, his melee attacks are just quick and snappy. But they're also on a very...
Are we prayer switching here at all, or are we just camping Soul Split?
Well, it depends on your skill level and your gear level.
Okay.
I can see it, like, obviously this boss is aimed at lower level players.
Tannis, what did you have to do? Were you able to soul split through it, or did you protect?
Yeah, no, I soul split.
Okay.
Soul split, and I'm running darkness as much as I possibly can.
Right. Yeah. It's very nice darkness.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's something I forgot to use. I'm super rusty at combat. It's been several months since I've really done bossing.
No, don't worry about it. I forgot to turn it on the first few runs because I'm still in Raziel mode where it doesn't work. So
actually, to put that into perspective, I logged in today and I still had 30 minutes left of overload.
Okay, so you came back for this boss. Fair enough, then. Well, I guess that's the boss doing what it needs to do. So before we get on to rewards and whatnot, Bears, you mentioned that folks at the ultra high end were revolutioning this. How did that go for you?
Good. I mean, I'd maybe die once or twice an hour. But to me, to sit there and not pay attention to it is worth it. I mean, it was a pretty simple rotation of basically just summon conjures, do the ghost ability, do the skeleton ability, skulls, all three scythe abilities, and that would be timed perfectly with his tail swipe, and you reso that, or when the minions get summoned, and you reso that for 6k or whatever, and then you can just revo him all the way down.
And that's basically all you need for a necromancy auto AoE revolution setup anyways, is those abilities you mentioned, and maybe scythe not scythe, like soul spender or something to that effect too.
Yep. Yeah, so it was super easy. I probably did like 10 kills or so manual and like actually learning the boss, and then I found that bar and I let it go for like 6 hours until I got log.
Nice. Yeah. I think that's kind of similar to what I ended up with for my revolution setup. I know there was a scythe involved. I know the Death Skulls were involved, and I went for the Volley of Souls. Did you go for that one or for the single one?
Volley.
Okay. So we wound up in the same spot. We got there differently, but we wound up in the same spot. And that's what we also said. And I'll actually use this moment here to plug this. We put out the action bar, Necromancy action bar micro lesson this week that Thaxi produced. youtube.com/RSBANDB for that, or linked in the show notes at update.show. And the whole thing about that we've learned is that, and what we've been saying since the beginning, it's very hard to make a bad revolution action bar for necromancy. And I think this boss proves that.
I can kind of agree with that.
I think the only...
Agree.
What was that, Bears?
No, in those first couple hours, I saw like 12 different bars where people are like, oh, this is mostly AFK. Like, this will work 95% of the time. This will work 90% of the time. It's just like, those are two completely different bars. Yeah. Like, how do they both work?
And is that a success story of necromancy then?
Kind of. It depends on how you look at it.
Because I just find it so interesting that's possible, and I think that's great. And I think the biggest thing that you run into with the revolutioning of this boss is making sure that you resonance the tail swipe properly. Are you using resonance or divert?
I was using reso because you usually would get the munch at the end of the last kill. So then you basically reso all that healing, all that health back up.
I thought it was typeless, though. Shouldn't it only just hit a 0?
The munch you take 6k from the munch, but then you heal back up, and the next kill with the tail swipe, that's a melee hit.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, I think the other biggest thing that you're going to run into with revolutioning this is just, making sure that you kill the minions so that they don't explode on you.
Yep.
And I assume Scythe handles that, right?
It, like I said, it did. I died maybe once or twice an hour, if that, and that was just when I got stunned at a bad time and Scythe didn't go off or something, or I relentless something, and then I had more adrenaline than I should have, and
right.
then
Where having
Revo
more
crazy.
adrenaline can actually be a detriment.
Yeah, no, I saw people were like talking like, should I mean, there were definitely people who did that, unperked their 295 armor
not
with
for this
relentless,
boss.
just to AFK it more
not
efficiently.
For this
I'm
boss.
like, that's not worth it.
No.
I will say I struggled a little bit with the minions, but I don't know how much of this is because of how rusty at combat I am, or if it's more of a testament to just how the RuneScape combat system can feel really clunky at times. But a lot of times, like, I would click on them, and then this got better after I started resoing there, or not resoning, using freedom.
Okay.
But a lot of times I would click on them and I would cast an ability and it just wouldn't fire.
Right. I don't click on them. I wait until they pass me, and then I activate Threads of Fate, and I use Volley of Souls on that, and that just kills them all.
Yeah, I was trying to do that too, but sometimes I would be late on it. I think again, part of it I think is because of me just not playing the game for a while. So I still have to retrain my brain to use target select to select one of them. Because that was one of the things that was tripping me up a lot. Especially if like it's the second ability of Threads, because sometimes Threads was the first one wouldn't kill them all.
Right.
I used to be in the habit of target cycling after every hit of a Threads, because I never know if the thing I was targeting before died. I guess I have to retrain my brain to do that.
Fair enough. Did anybody get any rings?
I got 3 rings.
Okay, so they're fairly common then. So I bet the guide price on that on the GE isn't too far off base with that. So we got Reavers, we got Zorgoth's ring, and now we have the Occultist ring. Obviously, Zorgoth's builds souls. Occultist builds necrosis stacks. I don't think, and Bears, you and I talked about this last week before the boss arrived, I don't think that that Reavers is getting displaced at the high end with Occultist after this update.
No, but it was closer than I thought it would be. I did use it a little bit, and I found the kill times to be relatively similar between Reavers and this one. I went to Rysel with it.
Oh.
And it just really depended if I got hits or not with Reavers, or if I got enough necrosis stacks. I think at places where you're not using a Grim, it might be okay to use it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Instead of the Reavers. If you're going for the crits, you might as well, go all in on the crits and use Reavers and a Grim. But if you're using a Jazz book, then yeah, this ring will work.
Right, because then you can kind of then lean into that more with the finger and the Death Guard spec too, to spend those necrosis stacks.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess the question is, if you take a minute, and I don't have the ring to test this, but if you with the 35% chance or whatever it is, and you take a minute and you just cast the purple necromancy attacks, what is the amount of soul stacks, or sorry, not soul stacks, necrosis stacks you're going to get from this? And then based off of that, you can determine, well, if I'm killing this boss for that long, that's going to be happening, and are these soul stacks going to help me instead?
I'm not sure if the ring should surpass Reaver's ring, because Reaver's ring, and even back before it was Reaver's ring, back when all we had was Berserker's ring, it was supposed to be okay, you have each of the rings for the each of the combat styles, and then Berserker's / Reaver's ring is the one that trumps all of them, or at least the one that's kind of like hybrid of all of them.
Yeah, and the reason it's so good is because for the vast majority of PVM critters out there, accuracy right now doesn't matter, and you can take that accuracy hit to get that crit chance.
However, set effects or item effects instead of just raw stats should offer each of the rings places where they can be better than the Reaver's ring. So, like, I would say the new ring, and even the one that came out before that, the one that generates souls,
the Zorgoth's ring from the quest.
Yeah, I'd say those two should be brought into Telos over Reavers, because you're not going to have the best accuracy at Telos, and this would mitigate that.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense from that perspective on there. And it's a 10% chance to generate 2 necrosis stacks with each cast, so it's not 35 like I was saying. And it's also got the prayer bonus on it too. But I think the thing I still find most interesting with Necromancy is that they're really leaning into that horizontal design on this, in that you have Zorgoths, you have Occultists, and you have Reaver, and none of them are an outright bad decision to make if you're bringing a ring with you. Yet at the same time, you can lean into, a specific boss, and maybe you're gonna have a better experience at one of them at the end of the day on that. But Bears, I want to try that now that you mentioned that at Raziel. I think I'm going to pick one of those up after the show and see how that goes.
Yeah, I like I said, getting pretty relatively the same kill times. It really just came down to when I got the rocks from it or not.
Yeah, that's fair. And of course, it's got access to the main drop table that's not specialized from the other matriarch. So that's of course the Lanakea's piece, the heart of the heart that goes for the Berserker ring out there too. So there's all sorts of opportunities here at this boss, and I think overall, if we're gonna sum this boss up, it hits the spot that it needs to. I mean, Tanis, I think that's even what you said. You agreed with that it hit the right spot.
Oh yeah.
And all of us who have done other things too, even if this was something that we walked in and killed instantly. I think we still all enjoyed ourselves too, minus the Anachronia wayfinding bit. Then probably, I think that's probably the best way to put this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
So I want to go back there now and actually try some AFK stuff. I tinkered with setting up an AFK bar on there, but I didn't really, just let it run fully AFK because I was too focused on, just trying to min-max these sorts of things out of that. But
that my first couple hours, I died like a couple times just because I'm like, well, I could try to apply Deathmark before. And then it just messed up the time and I die. I'm like,
right, okay. So there's that too.
With this too much.
And I mean, with that, did you maybe even think of going back down to tier 90 gear, perhaps?
So I did for a little bit, and I even took off Relentless on it just because we were kind of talking about that. And I was like, well, I could try tier 90 shirt without Relentless, and hopefully apply Deathmark occasionally. And it worked fine, but I didn't change my reset for it, so the next hour I just went back to the tier 95. So I was too lazy. So
yeah.
I didn't notice the difference between the two.
What do you guys make of the fact that the jail cell keys are tradable?
Well, not sure. Draw.
I had an interesting conversation with that this week.
Uh-huh.
I know there's a lot of trim compers who are anti-combat.
Right.
And they don't think combat achievements should be in trim comp.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, why is this any different than having like any of the Rise of the Six bobbleheads as a requirement for trim comp? You can buy those too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It feels inconsistent. I'm not trim comped. So I don't really care too much about it. But it was just like that felt a little inconsistent with that.
And but at the end of the day, I ask, is it really that big of a deal? Because we're dealing with a boss that is decidedly aimed at mid-tier PVM with that. So I don't know that it's necessarily a big deal because first you can, just go there and get them yourself if you want to. But the fact that they're also tradable to unlock those pets, I don't see it as an issue personally.
No, I don't either. It's just an interesting discussion.
And keep in mind, people have been asking for these little dinosaurs ever since 120 farming came out. And they finally have an opportunity to get them. So I think that says all we need to say on that.
I feel like they teased us with it with the accidental fire making area.
Yeah, because they pop out everywhere with that.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move on and talk about the Sanctum of Rebirth and the myriad of combat changes that are on the way, some of them may be a little bit controversial. I just want to thank our Patreon supporters for this week. I'd like to thank Alvaro L, Amos Reed, Andrew C, Arvid Zell, Chubura, Daniel W, Dominic R, Drama Free, Duramax, Gila Fleur, Jacob G, Jade Gizmo, Jason S, Jeebus, Jesse W, Keski, Lemon Lodge, Luminos, Pernasius, Renhawk, Ricky A, Rippeth, Runestar, Samuel FL, Scott DS, Shirt Pants, The Naked Captain, The Davin Goat, Tim, Tom V, Truth Ray, Ukulele Steve, Zant, and Zaza Khan. Big, huge thank you goes out to all of these people and everybody else who supports us on Patreon. You can learn more about this over at patreon.com/RSBANB. We have 3 tiers available presently because experience is sold out. Starting for as little as $1 a month, you'll receive a mention on the podcast in the show notes and access to an entire back catalog of monthly bits or bonus shows. And the most recent one that we're going to be doing on that is a discussion on what went wrong with the 6th Age. Voting just finished on that one not too long ago, so that's going to be an interesting discussion to have on that. And we also, of course, have our monthly bit that we put out a couple of weeks back here in May, where we talked about RuneScape's abandoned pieces of content. So things like the Church of You, Skilling Offhands, and a quest called Rite of Passage that in many places is the quest that shall not be named. But we got a lot of other stuff in there too, things on combat, legacy combat, and of course the world famous tier list. All of that for $1 a month if you want to support the podcast. We also have the VIP tier, where for $3 a month you'll receive a special VIP rank on Discord, which includes a rank and chat channel and access to high quality stereo versions of the podcast. And if you want to give a bit more, we have something called the Insider tier, where you get a shout out on the podcast each and every week for $5 and exclusive access to the outtakes that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And that also gets you the RSBANB update Christmas card. So patreon.com/RSBANB. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, are you guys ready to get your hands dirty? Be a little bit controversial, maybe?
It depends.
Get dirty.
Sanctum of Rebirth. There was a right-click examine live stream at the tail end of last week that we saved for this week for the combat panel. Now, they're looking at a new death mechanic potentially for this, in particular in that on normal mode they're thinking that rather than just getting killed and, taken out to Death's office, you would in effect just get disabled for a little bit. Then you'd be able to get back into the fight on this at Sanctum of Rebirth for the bosses. Do we like that? Is that the right direction for Death? How do we feel?
I think it depends how it gets delivered. If it gets delivered to a boss like Forecast, where there is area effect damage on the ground, and you die to that, and then you spawn and you take 6k damage right away because you spawned in the same spot you die, that would obviously suck. Because I know when people die in Forecast, they'll come right in and get teleported right onto poison and die right away again. So something like that wouldn't be great. But I actually do enjoy the idea. I think it'll be fun to kind of play around with it. And I think it is a good idea.
It's kind of how Death goes in other MMOs. Go for it.
What if it was like an elite dungeon where you just respawn at the last checkpoint? There'll be checkpoints along the way.
Well, that's the thing, is there is no checkpoints with this because it's just boss, boss, boss. They're removing all the stuff in between.
Well, then you would respawn outside.
Or do you mean like checkpoints within killing the boss with HP?
Maybe that too. I was thinking respawn outside the boss arena, but that could work. Oh, and before we continue on this, speaking of right-click examine, did anyone right-click examine the damaged bones from Osseous?
No.
It says spare ribs. I just thought that was cute.
Okay, that's good. So the idea behind this is that the Sanctum of Rebirth is a whole new building, and they, in the live stream, they said we know as players that you want more boss encounters, so the death system give lots of negative backwards progression, and there are plenty of players who disengage with the encounter and don't go back as a result of this, and it can also cause them to disengage with other encounters. Tanis? They're speaking to you on that, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
So I guess then the question for this is, imagine you had a boss that was a little bit more than Osseous, the newest Rex Matriarch, and you went in there on normal mode, you tried it, you got blapped, and rather than just going back to Death's office, would it be better if you could just get back into the fight after a short penalty, or how would you feel about that?
Well, yeah, this would be good for me, so that means that I'm sure all the upper echelon will hate it. Because it would be good for me.
And they kind of went there on the live stream, because I think it was Sponge who said that an average player might take 10 minutes to do this fight, while a good player would get through it in 2 minutes. And they said that, well, we don't exactly need to nerf the people who die, because if you take 10 minutes to do this boss fight while dying, and somebody who doesn't die takes 2 minutes, the person who takes 2 minutes is going to kill it 30 times an hour, whereas the person who takes 10 is only going to kill it 6 times an hour. So there's your inbuilt nerf with that. So I went there too, and I think that when it comes down to it, and what we saw with Necromancy, the whole shtick of new PVM encounters needs to be, how can we bring people in who haven't done PVM before? Because I think there's a shortage of people actually doing PVM in terms of some of the people I've talked to who have left the game after Necromancy, and you only fill that shortage by bringing new people in. So I'm 100% on board with this idea. How about you, Bears?
I guess you continue.
Or go next first.
I would say, so I play a lot of Terraria, and I've always seen, well, I guess it's called Classic now. It used to be called Softcore. Used to have Softcore, Medium Core, and Hardcore. Softcore, you die and you just drop half your money on the ground, and you can go back and pick it up, and that's it. And you would respawn back at your spawn point. Medium Core is like Minecraft. You die and you drop everything on the ground, and it'll, unlike Minecraft, it'll stay there forever, or at least until you leave the world. And so you can always go back and pick it back up. And Hardcore is you die and you're just gone. You're banned from the world. Or if it's single player, the world gets deleted. So I've always seen Softcore in that game to be like, oh hey, death has no consequences. That's just how it feels, and that's essentially the same way, the same setup as what they're proposing here. You die, and it's just a time loss.
Yeah,
like in Terraria, you'd have to get back to, say, wherever you were in your dungeon, or you'd have to start whatever boss fight you were doing over again. Whereas Medium Core, you also got to make your way back to your stuff in one piece, and then get out in one piece.
So are you for the idea then?
Given how much of the Terraria community prefers to play Classic, I would say it would be healthier for the game. But at the same time, I'm also concerned, I mentioned this to you last night, Shane, I'm sure. I'm concerned it might make the game feel like they're dumbing it down.
Well, there's still going to be a hard mode, and that was one of the big things that they mentioned, is that hard mode would be how we know hard mode in this game. So,
but they said that they're doing this as an experiment. I'm not sure if they said this explicitly, but it at least came off as, we're experimenting on if this would be healthy to implement across the whole game.
Right.
And if they do that, I think it would significantly dumb down the experience of the game.
Why though?
Because I'm not sure how to put it into words.
All right. Well, I'll come back to you on that. Bears, what do you think?
Well, to kind of go off that, and I don't believe this, but I know some people who would, that they believe necromancy dumbed down the game so much so that
I know people who quit over necromancy because of that.
Yeah, so I feel like it could lead to that same exact wave, which I think would be bad, but I don't actually think they would go through and move this throughout the whole game. I like the idea as just kind of a one-off, where it's in this one dungeon. It's like the goal of Archglake Core was to help people learn different mechanics, right? This could be another place that new players go learn the boss with very limited repercussions of dying. I think that is a good way to do it. I think it would be a good place to take new players. Like, let's group up. Like, someone wants to learn different rotations. Okay, let's go to this place together and do it as a team.
Right.
So if you die, it's not a big deal.
They also said that story mode serves no one, so that's kind of why they're looking at doing this sort of replacement for it. So
yeah, so I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. And I mean, if someone comes to me and asks for PVM help, there is a possibility that that's where I'll take them. Like, let's go here, let's go learn together, and boom, that's
not 100%
solo Archglake Core. I don't think so now.
One thing I will point out is that I do like the fact that they're trying to make it more accessible to players. So one thing, and I was noticing this when I was listening to the Jagex stream, and B when I was fighting Osseous. I feel like the game needs a lot more mid-tier bosses. Like, if you were to consider like God Wars Dungeon 1 to be low tier, or you can literally just roll your face across the keyboard and win.
See, that's the difference in perspective there. I don't necessarily know that that's the case for somebody who's even just starting out with necromancy.
Well, what I'm getting at is, like, I think we have enough low tier bosses, and we have enough high tier bosses. I think we need more mid tier bosses to try and ease people into bosses that can, actually make money and actually feel like a rewarding combat experience.
Right.
So like more God Wars Dungeon 2s, more Elite Dungeon 2s, and I want to point out ED2 in particular, because you get past Varicliffe, and then what do you have left for the entire dungeon? It's nothing but gemstone dragons.
Which are Slayer creatures.
Well, what I'm getting at is, there's a couple of offshoots where you can explore, and they have like books and whatnot, but they're not required to advance. It's nothing in terms of advancing through the dungeon. It's nothing but gemstone dragons. What's one of the first mechanics you experience when you fight Black Sword Dragon? The ground shakes, a black particle effect comes out of his face, and where it lands, a square of spikes comes out that deals massive damage and lowers your adrenaline. The exact same thing that players are now very familiar with from killing all of those gemstone dragons. That is good game design. That teaches the player what to do before they get into the boss. I want to see more of that. And Zuck does that too. You get into pizza phase, you already know how to take down those minions because you've already gone through all
done them before in the past. So I guess to sum this up, then, this is a good thing to do at mid-tier bosses, and I guess the success of it would determine where things go after the fact on that. But Bears, Tannis,
Yeah,
anything else on that before we move on to the magic weapons?
Mm-mm.
No, I'm okay.
All right. Next, I'll let you finish your thought. Then we'll move on.
Yeah, like I just think that they like telegraphing is one thing that's always needed. And I like to point out Rax as my favorite beating stick for bosses that have poor telegraphing. But structuring the boss and all of the encounters leading up to it in a way that eases the character, the player into it, and teaches them what to do. That is really good. Archglacier is another way that they did that really well, where you have normal mode, you can toggle all the mechanics on and off and learn how to do each mechanic themselves. Though I wish there was another checkbox to do their hard mode variant, because their normal mode variant is slightly different. But on even when you get into hard mode, you start from 0 in rage, which you can almost AFK, and then its difficulty only gets as high as you're comfortable with.
Right.
Especially with the enrage mechanic, or with the streaking mechanic, which I'm personally against removing it. I understand why they're removing streaking.
That was a Game Jam project. I don't know if that's actually coming into game. Then Mod Shogun moved over to OS after that. So who's to say on that?
Why.
I know that ruffled a lot of feathers when that was mentioned, but
I personally think that in terms of getting people to getting people to comfortably push past their boundaries and be like, okay, yeah, I think I'm better now. I can push to the next enrage, and I think I can do a longer streak now. That's very good. That's very healthy for getting new players in and allowing them to learn at their own pace.
And I think that the death stuff would definitely help in that. In that direction.
I would agree with that. I just don't think that it should be applied as a rule across the whole game.
Okay, that's fair.
But this dungeon, yes, I would agree.
Things that people didn't want applied through the rest of the game this week. Charging 9. That was a fun discussion in terms of whether or not that was actually going to be added for the dual wield magic weapons, the tier 95 dual wield magic weapons that are going to potentially be coming out of Sanctum Rebirth, alongside something to push weapons beyond tier 95, which we're thinking is accuracy based at this point. Just a note on Charging 9, based on what was said by JMods on their Discord, they're not firmly committed to adding it to the live game when these weapons arrive. The stated primary purpose of it in the beta is to gather data on rotations that are not switch heavy. So if people like it, it could come over. If people don't like it, it might not come over. So I think Charging 9 is kind of a moot point right now. I like the mechanic. I know, Bears, you don't. So why don't you like the idea of it?
I think it will depend. I think if we're going to go off of the 3 sets of dual wield weapons right now, it will not work with Wand and Orb 1 and 2. Set 3, it might work. But the idea with it is to not switch, right?
Yeah.
Fine idea. I don't agree with it, but I see the reasoning. If you put it in place and they choose Wand and Orb set 1, then the FSOA will instantly become an EOF weapon.
And that's the sense I was getting when I was messing around with this on the beta today. I will say that. I will say that. I like the fact that it's a thing, and I think it's time that we look at ways of putting the nail in the coffin of 4-tick auto attacking. I realize that might be a controversial thing in some parts, but I think it's time. I think it's time that we look at moving past that. And I
think it needs to die.
I would like, personally, for me, if it was up to me, I would be happy to have something like this charging mechanic in game that prevents switching. I would be okay with that for me. And is there anything else, Bears, on yours about why you don't like it aside from it, in effect, forcing the Fractured Staff into an EOF?
I think that's the main reason. So, and it'd probably be something I get used to, but when I was messing around on the beta, it'd be like I switched to it, and then I'm like instantly like, wait, where are the buffs? Where are the buffs I'm getting? Why aren't I getting them? And it's just like that feels like those 9 seconds are completely wasted.
And 9 seconds is a lot of time
that.
in some PVM encounters.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, and the only reason it could work with set 3 is because the bleeds with set 3 you're not going to be using them during Sunshine anyways, so you do your typical Sunshine rotation with FSOA, and then once you're out of Sunshine, then when you switch to it, you'll have about 10 seconds of that buff being applied for the bleeds, which probably still isn't enough, but it could in theory work.
Yeah. Okay. And see, that's interesting. You're looking at it from this perspective as just being, what is it going to do if you're using these weapons and you want to switch to something else? Because the point that I see is that we have the tier 90, the tier 92, and then potentially with this tier 95 wands, you would potentially have a class of people who just wouldn't use that tier 95 wand setup as a result of this, and they might use it for the damage, but that 2-piece set really wouldn't be a factor for somebody who's switching. So I want to talk more about switches after, but what is your favorite of the 3 potential sets that we have here? I'm gonna just run through them quickly for the people on audio who haven't been briefed on them, but they're looking at 3 potential sets here. The first one has its 1-piece set effect of increasing adrenaline gain by 25% from 8 to 10, and it consumes Insatiable, which reduces the cooldown of Wild Magic by 6 seconds. The second set consumes Insatiable with a 25% chance of completely refreshing the cooldown of Wild Magic, and the third one is an entirely different set effect that focuses on damage over time effects with magic. The first set effect increases the damage over time abilities deal by 30%, and the second one adds a new Essence Corruption stack where your dots have a 30% chance to empower dealing the damage instantly. At 25, you will deal bonus damage against enemies, which is 100% of stacks plus 100% of your magic level. And at 50, basic abilities generate an additional 3.6 adrenaline over 6 seconds. So, Bears, which one's your favorite?
Damage-wise and rotation-wise, it was the first set. Just the consistency that you'll be able to get with that.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough time with it, but I could start to see a pattern in there, and it seemed consistent, which is good. Set 2, I felt was just too RNG based. It would mess up rotations too much, which you could have the debate, is that a good or a bad thing? I personally did not like it. And then I thought set 3 though was the most fun, most unique idea. And I mean, I sat there felt like 100% adrenaline the whole time, using thresholds and ultimates all the time, just because
I noticed that too.
So much adrenaline with the bleeds. I'm like, this is kind of fun. So I think that was the most fun. I just don't know if it's good enough yet.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough bleeds with magic.
So next, what was your favorite? What was your favorite?
So admittedly, I haven't actually been on the beta.
Okay, well, just in theory then.
I'd probably say the first one probably seems more like it would be favored more by people who like to sit down and before they even go into the boss, plan out how they're going to handle things.
Right, the rotation, planned rotation.
Plan their rotation out. And I'm like that at a lot of places. Maybe not all of them. I do see the value though in, say, the RNG version, the second version, where you have to be more reactive to things. But at the same time, that comes with its issues. Like, say you're going for the best kill time, well, you might just get screwed over this kill. You know?
I went in and I personally initially thought that number 2 was going to be my favorite, but after playing around with them, I wound up liking number 1 the best.
I guess, again, I haven't tested them yet, but I guess the biggest issue that I could possibly foresee with the first one is, okay, you can use all of these thresholds a lot more frequently, but do you have the adrenaline for it?
But which one do you like? Which one would you pick right now if you were picking one?
I'd probably pick the first one, mostly because I like to spreadsheet things out.
Okay, that's fair.
And like Bear's already mentioned, the magic just is not a bleed.
No, and I think that's the biggest issue with the third one is that right now the only bleeds we have are Combust and Corruption Blast.
Yeah, that's Melee's job to bleed.
Yeah. And I think you could, make a case that maybe you add Magma Tempest onto this. Maybe you add Tendrils onto this, but this would, be the third iteration, I think, of Tendrils in a recent number of years. But at the same time, you'd be kind of taking away the magic crit meta from Tendrils on that. So I don't necessarily know that that's a good idea. So I don't like the third one because it's only the 2 abilities. And, keep in mind if you're using this in group content, which, is a rarity, though, if you're doing Zamorak, maybe it's something that you would do. But I think you use range there, right, Bears?
I do, yes.
Or is magic acceptable?
It's fine. Any of the 4 combat styles are fine there.
All right. And the point I'm making is that you are overwriting somebody else's bleed if you are adding a new stack of Combust or Corruption Shot to an NPC.
That's also an issue.
So
I've always had an issue with that. I really wish that they would fix that, especially since it's really unintuitive and it's not communicated to the player at all.
Right.
Even as it's happening.
Like if we had more bleeds and that wasn't an issue with the way bleeds worked in the game, I'd say go for number 3. But I think at this point we probably have to say we just probably got to go for number 1 or number 2 on this, whichever one I think just feels better at the end of the day. You think that's a good summary, Bears?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay, good. Tanis, do you have any questions on these spec attacks or what have you? Or the set effects, I mean?
Yeah, no, not really. I wish there was a little bit more in the bleed. I would have gravitated towards 3.
Yeah, because it's an interesting play style, I think, but it just goes counter to what is magic, I think, with all the crit stuff, right? That's my general sentiment.
I mean, unless you're someone like me who just isn't critting all the time and DPS, you're not getting a bunch of DPS, so like the added adrenaline would be helpful for me to stay in sunshine or be able to pull off more thresholds. I don't know. It sounds that sounds like it would be better for me.
Didn't they already have a weapon that I only used high tier magic for a couple months. Didn't they already have a weapon out that gives you adrenaline when you crit? Or am I just thinking of Hydrix bolts?
Hydrix bolts, Tsunami.
There's
something for Melee.
That's right. It's an ability that okay.
Yeah, it's the whole Tsunami business
seconds.
with that. I will say these wands and the magic ability changes do have me, eyeing magic again as a combat style. And I like the way this looks, and I appreciate that, when these things arrive, they'll probably be hideously expensive being tier 95s, but that's kind of where we go into the magic ability section. The beta has effectively really, really shook up what we do in relation to things like Sonic Wave, Concentrated Blast, and Magma Tempest. The beta removed the restrictions for using those with either two-handed or dual-wielding weapons. I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off right now, and I'm going to say I ran into people at War's Retreat on the beta world saying that they absolutely loved being able to just camp their fractured staff now and being able to use greater concentrated blast with it. I saw that. It wasn't just one person, it was multiple people. We also had people saying that in our Discord. And the part that I think we need to really just, take a moment and pause on is realizing that the Sonic Wave incarnations, including Greater Sonic Wave, really don't do much for us right now. Granted, yes, Greater Sonic Wave has the ability to increase accuracy, and, they said we'll probably need that at Sanctum of Rebirth and other bosses in the future because they want to lean into that now that that's a bit more of a mechanic, but it's kind of difficult asking players to think about that going forward and say, well, if we put dual wields and Greater Sonic Wave together, how would this feel when at most places in the game right now, accuracy just doesn't matter?
See, this is what I was actually leaning into with in regards to the charging. So it always feels a lot better to be encouraged to camp one weapon or to play the game and play any game in any certain specific way, rather than being punished for not doing that.
Yeah.
So charging, I think that's part of why people hate it so much. It's a punishment for switching weapons, whereas this is encouraging them. It's rewarding them for staying on one weapon.
Yeah, like one of the guys I was talking to there said that, he only pulls out his ice-dyed fractured staff for a spec every now and then, and he's actually now seated for a full rotation with this.
Yeah, you could still have it so that you can switch in certain situations. I don't think you should be hard locked forever until you leave combat.
Agree on that.
But you should be encouraged to camp one thing and get the benefit from it.
Yeah.
Instead of punished for not doing it.
Bears, where do you come in on this, being a fractured staff owner and whatnot?
You hit the nail right on the head. The Greater Concentrated Blast is 1.5 million times better than Sonic Wave. If you're using, if you're at a high level boss and you use Sonic Wave, there's an issue going on somewhere. That ability shouldn't be anywhere near your bar. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with this. My personal favorite was being able to use Magma Tempest anytime out of the three. That felt a lot better. It doesn't feel like it needs to be a two-hand weapon only. It feels like it could be both. So
I want them to do something here that's perhaps really out of the box, and I don't think they will. But here's my idea: ship it how it is right now. Ship them all without restrictions.
I was almost thinking the same thing, because I don't dislike it, and I think I agree with you that Greater Sonic Wave will have its place, just not right now.
Right, but it's very hard to get players to imagine there being a use case for that. And until there's a use case for that, you cannot relegate dual wield magic to Greater Sonic Wave.
Yeah, you cannot.
Could I add a bit of just somewhat of a side tangent? What if visually, when you're casting Conch Blast with a staff, instead of the whole throwing energy orbs back and forth that you have with dual wielding, you shoot a laser beam out of the tip of your staff?
Or
what if they just visually change it when you're wielding a staff?
Or here's a fun idea: just make the energy course through your staff. That'd look really neat.
Yeah. Nothing else has to change. Nothing mechanical. It just looks cool.
Right. And see, that's the thing. I don't know who would be hurt by allowing concentrated blast for two-handed. I don't know who would be hurt by unlocking Magma Tempest. The only people who would be hurt at the end of the day are people who are using dual wield after this with greater sonic wave until there comes a time where you need that accuracy buff, which you don't right now.
Though I do want to point one thing out. If they go through with this change, there's one massive elephant in the room that I've never seen anyone mentioning yet. Melee. Melee is a complete, like, dual wielding melee is a completely different animal from two-handed. It might as well be a completely different style.
And I feel like that just underscores the complexity of that combat type, in addition to needing to get up close and personal with everything.
So if they make this change, do you think do you think it's only a matter of time before they start looking at melee in that regard?
I think so, because ranged really had its time in the sun and was really buffed up with the changes from March. And, you know, if you do this ability change, allow concentrated blast and whatnot to be used with things like the fractured staff, that's bringing magic up a step with that. So I think it would only be a matter of time before you would be able to do anything on that. And I thought what I was going to say in here was going to be controversial about that. Just, you know, opening up the floodgates and letting sonic wave and greater concentrated blast be used with anything, as with Magma Tempest, and just ship it how it is right now on the beta. I thought that would be controversial, but maybe it is in some circles. But at the end of the day, I think, and I'll reiterate this again, I think whatever you're looking at, whether things need to be nerfed or buffed, I always feel like if it's possible, rather than, you know, bringing things down, I feel like it's better to bring everything else up around side things. Because, you know, keep in mind, we said in March that out of all the combat styles, magic was by far the least powerful. I think that was our thing, right, Bears? Is that necromancy and ranged were tied depending on the application. Melee was just behind that, and the magic significant ways behind melee, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought that would be controversial, but I'm glad that we're able to hammer that in. And I mean, hey, if you're listening to this after the show, post in the comments or post on Discord if you think it's controversial yourself. But let's get to some skilling, because I know Tannis wants to talk about his level 110 skills here. How do you feel about level 110, Tannis?
Almost.
Okay.
I will take my half a loaf. I feel like they gave me never mind. I'm not gonna make it political, but let's just say I'm used to getting half a loaf. But it's a good half, right? I mean, it is 110. It turns out that your side of the argument that of there needing to be content is what they have come down on. Fair enough. I think that this is probably the beginning. They're saying 110 now. That's only because
120 within 5 years.
Yeah, I mean,
because the thing was 110 for everything
content
within the next 2 to 3 years, and then another 2.5 years down the line, everything 120.
Yeah, and that's the way that I see that too. I'm kind of surprised that they're putting as much content behind it. And especially with what they were talking about in the live stream of that is a focus, is consistent content update, consistent skilling.
Do you remember
updates.
what I said when we were in the drought about old school and how I love the old school updates that they get?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is that it was always a good mix of combat quests and skilling content.
Yeah.
And that's what this feels like.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that was something that I commented on when we first got the roadmap. Was there was a really good mix in there, and I think they've done a decent job with different kinds of content. I'm curious to see just exactly what the new methods will be, what some of these changes are going to look like. I'm surprised to see mining and smithing at the top of it.
That's funny you should ask that, because there's a paragraph or two from Mod Jack on that.
Yeah.
His rationale is that because of the rework, the skills are in a good spot to add new content, and the second is to do with the way the skills that interact. He says, I would agree that woodcutting and fletching needs an update more, but if we were to add a new type of hatchet, it would make sense for that hatchet to require the new tier of metal.
We have our new tier of hatchet, but yeah, I mean, I guess you could go up one more from there. No, that makes sense, but at the same time, I'm just kind of surprised. I don't think that it's a coincidence though, because look at you got your T95 Magics. Now we're talking about a two-hander. You're talking about this could be this could be Melee's entry point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really excited. And I know that they said that they would only, if a skill doesn't make sense or if it's just too big of a job right now, they're gonna hold off on that.
Mm-hmm.
So. Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate. Like some of the skills, that means the skills that need it the most might be at the end of the list. I'm looking at you, Agility. You need to be first on the list.
Hunter needs it the most. Hunter's horrible.
Hunter sucks. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But Hunter has a ton of content. Like,
I know a lot of people really like Big Game Hunter.
No, just Hunter as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, as a skill, there's, I don't know, there's more content there than there is, like, agility-wise, right?
Yeah. Bears, what do you think about 110?
I'm super excited about it. I mean, I already have 120 all, so it's not gonna be like too exciting to be getting that XP. But
you can get in there on day one and get access to everything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm super excited for it. I think the most important part of this is them kind of giving a timeline of like, hey, here's kind of things that we're going to be working on for the next 2 to 3 years. We want all the skills to be up to 110, and then in Forge 6 we want 120. So like just kind of seeing that game plan. Now they have to follow through.
Yeah,
but like,
and that's the biggest thing. They got to follow through on this and not change paths in another 18 months.
And I also absolutely loved that they didn't just, here's the info, and that's it. They said, here's the info.
This is a conversation with you guys. If 110 doesn't feel right, let us know.
Yeah, they are handling this as well as they could be, and it's super exciting to see it.
Yeah. All right. Next, any thoughts on 110 before we move on to the actual metal business?
So, kind of mentioned this in DMs. I think this offers them a good way of making sure that they flesh out all of those levels leading up to 120. Like, we look at necromancy, and like I think that's the biggest offender in the game.
Right, that was mentioned in the live stream. Nothing beyond 107.
Yeah.
Aside from crit bonuses and whatnot.
I even look at some of the older 120 skills, so or the 120 reworks. Like I look at Herblore, and a large chunk of the post 99 Herblore unlocks are just make previous recipes or previous potions.
Make them more efficient and whatnot,
Yeah, make it so you make them faster,
right?
Or
and
you
so
use less resources.
So in effect, you could have squished that down to being in 110 or something to that effect. I see that as a fair argument.
And meanwhile, I look at skills that came out as 99 or as 120, and I know necromancy aside, but what dungeoneering, like that whole structure is.
Let's not talk about dungeoneering.
I like dungeoneering.
Oh,
I hate how it's become right now because you can't find a team anymore. But back when you could find a team, it was fun. But that's aside. The way it was structured, there's something to do at least every other level, or at least something to unlock. you look at archaeology, there's something along. There's something.
That's the
along
real
the
special
entire,
one. That's the
the
special
entire
one.
way through.
Right. So basically, to distill that down, is you want it to feel like archaeology compared to a necromancy or a slayer on launch with that.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the invention skill tree.
no. Invention needs a whole nip tuck in itself, but that's my opinion on that. So what they're going to be doing with this, or they aim to do rather, is bringing the Daemonheim ores to the surface world with level 100 mining. You'll be able to mine all 10 ores from Novite to Promethium, and then combine them together to smith the new primal bar with 100 smithing. And the rocks work exactly as rocks do right now in game, as with all of the bars. And you'll also, of course, be able to have a new ore box as well with that. And they did mention stone spirits as well. The primal stone spirit, the one stone spirit that people threw rocks at me for at that episode when I made that.
Are
joke.
you sure they threw rocks at you and not stone spirits?
I mean, they're throwing duplicated rocks at me with their one stone spirit. On the smithing side, with 100 smithing and each of the new ores, you'll be able to smelt the primal bars. And what they're doing with this is they're making it use the one rather than the two ores as they previously had. So they said instead of just making one primal bar, you'll be making 5 at once. The primal bars are then used to create the new primal armor and primal two-handed sword on that. So it just fits nicely into the mining and smithing setup that we have right now. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. They also did mention that the Masterwork two-handed sword is coming out, which is going to be at level 110, requiring level 99 attack to wield, and will be the game's first tier 100 weapon. How do we feel about that?
It'll depend. I don't think it will replace any of the melee weapons unless it's a halberd style.
No,
and then
that's not happening. I was already asked if it was going to be halberd range.
I think it might have its place in the new dungeon,
and that's exactly it. Because they said
that's about it.
Yeah, they said Sanctum of Rebirth will have high defense tier, where tier and accuracy will matter. And they said if they go back to a point where accuracy matters in the game without Splashscape, that's where these new tiers of weapons come in. The intention is not to create a better weapon than what's already out there from the PVM drop tables, and the top tier PVMers will still want things like your Zuck Sword and whatnot.
Yeah, because... Okay, so... I feel like Jagex is conflicted with themselves, because it was only a couple months ago that they were saying... They were talking about, oh yeah, we don't want to make more and more higher tiers of weapons. We want to just stick to, like, say, 95... and just make more variations so that players have more of a choice, like with item effects and whatnot, and like different builds that you can do. Like maybe here's a bleed build, here's a poison build, things like that. And then they go and do this, it just contradicts themselves.
Finish.
But if they just make it tier 100 in terms of accuracy, that could be
bingo. That's the kicker.
That item's effectively.
There you go. And would you believe the initial plan with this was to bring attack to level 110 with this, as well as with attack and strength going to 110 with mining and smithing. But they have put the attack to 110 on the side and leaving that decision with the combat devs about when those skills go to 110 on that. So it's just going to be mining and smithing to start off with.
But at the same time, packaging is also important. If they label it as a tier 100, well, now it's only a matter of time before the players ask for everything to be upgraded to tier 100, and also to have tier 100 power as well. And
well, that might be happening Because remember, there's something they said that's coming with Sanctum Rebirth that'll let us push our weapons beyond tier 95. So,
like, what if instead of making it a tier 100, they make it a tier 95, and on the tooltip it says has double accuracy?
that might be the best way of going about it, honestly, based on that. But I just want to pick up a couple of other things here that were also in the live stream with this, in addition to the mining and smithing stuff. Does anybody else have anything on the actual core mining and smithing updates and the pickaxe that's coming with this? I feel like this is all, as kind of as expected. Nothing, no surprises here.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I also
Go
ahead.
They haven't even fleshed out all the tier 95s. They're still waiting on crossbows.
Yeah, and I feel like because of that, leaning into the attack side is not going to be that big of the accuracy side not going to be that big of an issue. But just a couple of other things from the live stream on this. They said a huge focus for the team right now is making sure that content delivery can be consistent, because we know that has been an issue in the past.
Yeah, it has.
As in, don't promise 110 if you can't do it for everything, and make sure that you actually have the content that you're able to ship with this, because you don't want to be in another drought. So if they can nail that down, that's going to be tremendous, because I think that's the biggest thing that I took from that live stream is they want content delivery to be consistent again.
Yeah, and if they don't have to keep making U-turns and course corrections all of the time, then we might be able to get there, right? Like, I think that's been the thing that has prevented consistent content releases.
Yeah, totally. Also, the question of inverted skill capes came up. Apparently, every single piece of content that is worked on, whether it makes sense or not in the design meeting, asks if inverted skill capes can be the reward. The only reason that they aren't put in the game is that they should be an accomplishment, and they haven't had the right piece of content to attach them to yet. And here we thought all this time it was something controversial, but they're looking at ways of adding it in. Why didn't we hear this sooner?
What if inverted skill caves are the reward for 200 mil?
I feel like that
already has its own.
I feel like that's maybe a bit too much of an ask at this point.
120 already has its own special cape.
They were talking that, maybe 110 might not be the best spot. Maybe 120 might. And, the point, I think, is that they're looking at this at the end of the day. And I think, I know there's people who did Fresh Start who wanted them to be exclusive, and then there's people who bought them for tons of money after the fact. But for me, 120 Archaeology Inverted was always unfinished business with Fresh Start that I never was able to do. So I will jump up and down and do whatever I need to do to get those 10. Which Inverteds were your unfinished business from Fresh Start?
I'd just like to grab I would like to grab a 120. I got like 11 inverted 99 capes.
Oh, right, because you focused on 99s for Fresh Start.
Yeah.
And then we kind of got blindsided with the rates going down.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to get a 120 cape, probably Archaeology 120. It's just a.
It's
if
a
I'm going to
special
do
skill.
something, I might as well really enjoy it. And I'm not going to be like, I could see some people being a little butthurt over this, but I'm not one of them people. Like I'm not. I know where I was. I know how I got mine, and it's mine. Right? If someone gets theirs in a different way, it
doesn't matter.
Take anything away from what I did or where I got mine. So
yeah, you can always say that you did it.
That's right. So I'm curious. I do hope that it is significant enough.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I don't think 110 would be the spot.
I don't really either. And like Next Gen said, it's we already have 120 capes. I'm not sure where we put the inverted. I almost think that some other timed event might be a better place for it rather than just adding them.
Now that I think about it, it would kind of make sense to do inverted at 120 or 110. 120 has the special case with like the particle effects coming out. It's got a different shape and all that, especially towards the bottom. And then 200 mil would be an inverted version of that.
Yeah, and see that's an interesting way of putting it. I was actually just thinking, what if the inverted non-120 cape came from 110, and then at some other place you decided you were going to add in the inverted 120 somehow, or maybe even just have it as an unlock at 120 with that. I don't know. It still doesn't feel so special with that. I think you're right, Tanis. I think it's got to be like a time limited event, like a leagues or something like that, if they ever do that.
Yeah, that's what I feel. Now, on the other hand, like I do agree that I've always thought there should be something for 200 mil. It's too big of an achievement. It's
but do you want to force people to wait for a override for that?
I'm not saying in just this case. I'm saying like I am in favor of some sort of a cape, some kind of something for 200 mil. Like I do agree that 200 mil should have something. But no, I think this is a league type reward.
Yeah. I think the last thing I want to say, in addition to all these things talking about 110, they did say they realized that with Fort 4 and 3 that they weren't able to compete with Mahogany or Proteins, so they had to nerf in that case. And they also said that Big Game Hunter came with a nerf to existing Hunter content. You remember that one?
Mm.
And they said
that one was bad, though.
And they said what they now know and what they would prefer doing is they would prefer nerfing things.
Yeah, which is good. And I didn't feel the construction and the Fort 4 and 3 stuff was a big nerf. I mean, honestly, I thought we got way more on the back end than we lost on the front end.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, even Jagex has been trying to cut down on XP inflation.
Yeah, that too. And I feel like
at some point the only way to do that is to nerf things.
Right, if you believe that, and I don't. They do. I don't.
Well, they said they would prefer to avoid nerfing content.
Yeah.
So, another thing is that the skill has to do something. A skill should at least have one way of leveling it and have a clear purpose in the game, and that purpose should remain true from low to high level. And I think, we see problems with that with Agility and Hunter, just to name a few of them.
The biggest culprit of that is, come on, fire making.
I would have agreed with you if it weren't for A, incense sticks, and B, well, at least.
But incense are kind of an offshoot of Herblore that they're an offshoot of Herblore with a fire making to try to make it relevant.
Yeah,
I would say B, accidental fire making.
Yeah, that's good content, but there's still nothing in the skill that's meaningful.
There's no purpose to create fire. There's nothing.
It's not Survivor.
Even in terms of cooking, you actually burn less on a range than you do on a fire.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Of course, yeah.
And some things you just can't cook on a fire in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's another question. They said, would you rather have unlocks delivered through a reward shop like Garden of Carid or leveling up? And Mod Jack said that in his opinion, leveling up is the better way to go with that, and that's why they're looking at the push for 110.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I
have more
agree with that
Garden of Crid
completely.
reward shops. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's pretty much everything for the right-click examine on skilling. Is there anything else?
No, I'm just really excited. They didn't leave us behind, before when we would see
No
a
skill
combat
left
focus.
behind, right, Tannis?
There we go. No skill left behind. Right. Yeah.
I just have to think back to this Reddit post I saw. It was one of those like OSRS player tries RS3 kind of posts, and he's like, he mentions fire making. He's just like, fire making actually has a use. Imagine that.
Okay.
Like it does have its uses in RS3.
Yeah. Bears, you have anything before we depart here?
No, I think it's like I said before, the most important part is just the communication that they are showing with this game plan, and it's just going to be whether they keep to it. And for some reason, I feel confident they will. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and the one thing I do have to say on this is that I welcome the Roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s?
Yeah, you never heard the expression, the Roaring 20s, Tannis? Is that more?
I know what you mean.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that was Prohibition time. We don't. No, that was not a good
Right,
time.
and that's why it's the perfect time to welcome back the Roaring 20s with 110s and 120s for all the RuneScape skills.
Okay, but no Prohibition.
I mean, I don't think you need Prohibition, no.
No, I mean, this is the only game. This is one of the few games you can actually drink with. So no, we'll have no Prohibition.
It's one of the few games you can drink in as well.
That's true.
And it's encouraged with the bar crawl.
That's right.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, so I have an interesting story about that. My clan, I keep wanting to say tribe because I play too much Ark. My clan has a rule. If there's one person that has in their bank all of the drinks. If you request that selection of drink or that collection of drinks, of course, obviously excluding the untradeable ones. If you request that, you are now the one to hold on to them until someone else requests it. So there's just this one collection of drinks that goes around the entire clan, and it just cycles to all the new players.
So do you think we should have something like that for RS then, for the bar crawl and whatnot?
I mean, what me and my friends used to do, we would just grab an inventory of kegs and drink a keg, and then box each other in our POHs.
Or at the Sand Casino, right?
Well, you gotta get real good and spirited before you go to the Sand Casino. So that's the finale.
Oh wait, I might have misinterpreted when you said bar crawl. Were you talking about that achievement where you have to talk to the drunken dwarf with 28 different ales?
Yes,
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
In hindsight, you could have been talking about the mini quest.
Yeah. Well, I think when the fact we're talking about bar crawls and whatnot in game, I think that means it's probably time for us to move on to other things, including, it's going to be obviously with skill updates with combat and quests and story along the way. That's why I said we welcome the Roaring 20s. But what else was roaring this week was, of course, the finale of Double XP. Starting off with some achievements. Atria's got 99 agility on the 29th, as well as 99 construction. Demi Heights got 99 construction on the 28th. On the 27th, we have Adani with 120 construction, Bellicosity with 99 hunter and 99 rune crafting, Dane Karai with 99 farming and 99 prayer, and Arendelle 20 with 120 construction.
Nice. And we have Merriweather with 120 Archaeology on the 27th. We have Scromos Deputy with 99 Fishing on the 27th. Dat Engineer with 200 mil Woodcutting on the 26th. Drama Free with 99 Agility on the 26th. Godin with 120 Runecrafting, Dungeoneering, and Hunter. All on the 26th. Ooh. That sounds painful, but congratulations.
Maybe he needed a keg for that.
Yeah, I think.
I would say entire bar crawl.
Continuing on the 26th, we got Lord Zorik with 99 crafting, Robbie with 200 mil defense, our good friend Shane 12088 with 120 fletching. Moving on to the 25th, I don't know. On the 25th, we have Arcane with 120 fletching, Archivist 99 divination, Bella Costi 99 fishing, and Drama Free with 99 summoning.
And then moving on, all of these are on May 23rd. We have Diapolo on with 120 Herblore. Hephaestus 5 with 120 Necromancy. Jadkor with 120 Construction. Quests are shit. I remember that name. With 120 Divination, and I love how perfectly this username matches up with the achievement. Woody got 120 woodcutting.
Hey,
that's pretty
nice.
Good. Bears, you said you were going to make fun of me. Is that all you have? Pronouncing the numbers different?
It's late. I couldn't think of anything. I spent most of the show trying to think of something. I came up with nothing.
Okay.
There's just too many good options, you know?
Fair enough. Next, now I believe you have a pick for us. What do you got?
Yeah, so my pick of the week is a small little indie title. Indie game. So, who likes spaceships?
Of course.
Yay.
Who likes blowing up spaceships with other spaceships?
Sure.
And mining resources out of asteroids with lasers, and becoming a space pirate, and even forming your own trade routes. So
sounds cool.
So my pick of the week is a game called Avorion, and you can do all of that in this game. So what I love about this game is it's only grindy it's only as grindy as you want it to be. There's plenty of ways you can play this game where it's not grindy, but if you want it to be grindy, the grind is super relaxing. You can sit there and just mine a bunch of asteroids and just chill. And when you're doing so, the music in the background, it is so peaceful. It is a phenomenal experience in terms of the atmosphere, or I guess lack thereof, since you're in space. But
yeah, it makes sense.
It's you can sit there and mine out asteroids. You can just forego all of that and go fight enemy starships. You can be a space pirate and do that. You can salvage their ships afterwards. You can even salvage their ships while they're still alive, which I always find entertaining. You can get, one of my favorite ways to play is that you can gather a whole swarm of mini fighter ships that you can release from a larger mothership, and they're so busted. You can equip them all with like railguns, and they're just mini snipers. They're
sounds like you found an indie game that's actually good, because I know Tanis and I have talked in the past about how there's so much garbage on Steam in this day and age.
Okay, so indies are kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of crap out there, but there's also there's always going to be
the gems,
diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
Like another one in that regard is Risk of Rain. Like Risk of Rain 1, and especially in my opinion, Risk of Rain 2 is a fantastic indie dev made by just 3 people in their basement. And that's basically how this game was.
Okay, I was going to ask, what's the dev team on this one? Is it indie like that here too?
Yeah, it's indie. I'm not sure how much they've grown, but it's pretty much like just a couple guys and girls. I remember their community manager. She loved the whole experience. And it's a lot of fun. If you want to just chill and like not really do anything intensive and just be in Zen mode, go do some mining. If you want some action, there's action to be had in the combat. If you want to build your own ship and make it how you want it, you can. There's definitely an aspect of that. You can get these modules, these upgrade modules for your ship that have actually a really interesting mechanic to them. You can equip them to your module slots, or you can permanently equip them to your module slots and get extra benefits out of them. I say permanent with an asterisk. You can remove them later only if you're at an equipment depot. So it kind of forces you to stick with that while you're in the field, and then maybe when you return back home, you can go and swap things out. If
it sounds like, how many hours have you put into this? It sounds like a lot.
Let me see. Let me pull it up on Steam.
Because this definitely sounds like one of those games that people absolutely just love for its own indie base, and we're gonna have a bunch of people checking this out after the show, I'd imagine. But
yeah,
I have 900 hours in it.
Okay, there we go.
And the graphics are they're exactly what they need to be. Again, the soundtrack is so calm and soothing when you're not in combat. When you're in combat, it has its energy. There's actually a really, really good boss track I like when you fight the AI. I love that track.
Nice.
And the whole game has a bit of a journey to the center of the galaxy kind of feel in terms of story. So, long story short, there was this whole cataclysmic event that tore a bunch of rifts in space all across the galaxy, and there was an entire ring of these rifts that encircled the center, and it was as such that everyone in the center thinks that the universe just shrunk because they just can't get out. There's just nothing there past that point from their perspective. Everyone outside was like, we want to get in and see what happened. And all of this...
So there's a story to it, too. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And all of this happened as a result of this alien race called the Zotan that flooded the galaxy. And they're basically, I'd say, almost robotic in their nature. They never respond to comms, and they target everything on sight. But only after there's an energy signal, like you shoot at them or something. If you ignore them, they'll just keep flying past you and then eventually just warp out.
Well, that's the whole thing with aliens in space in general, is that you kind of want to maintain a low profile, or you could, I guess, be dead, and we don't know if we've attracted the attention of anybody, though we could find out in a few hundred or a few thousand years. But sounds like a good pick of the week. Does anybody else have anything before we go? I feel like we've been around from entry-level combat, well, not entry-level, mid-level bossing, I'll say, to some higher-end stuff, and then skilling at the end, the full, well-balanced RSBANDB update. Tannis, I think we've done everything here.
Yep, I think we said it all, and I have a new game on my wish list now. So
sounds good. Sounds good. We'll be back next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update, everybody. Please do make sure to subscribe to the podcast if you want it delivered automatically. We're on all the podcast listeners, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, YouTube as well, youtube.com/RSBANDB. And if you're a Patreon member, we do have a feed on Spotify. If you link up your Patreon and Spotify together, you can get all the Patreon extras directly sent to you in Spotify. That's a new feature that they have for that. But update.show/subscribe. We'll be back next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. Bears and Nex, thanks for joining us. Great having you.
Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks for having us.
And Tanis and I will be back next week. See you then, everyone. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.